of strengthening climate resilience, which is really important. As we know, the climate shocks are becoming more frequent, intense, and unpredictable, with disproportionate impacts and vulnerable communities that we know, particularly in Africa. So losses and damages are already eroding livelihoods, food systems, and also development gains that are achieved through a lot of investment and a lot of efforts. So there is an urgent need to shift from reactive crisis response to more proactive, risk-informed resilience-building efforts that we are here today to discuss. Investing in resilience and prevention in far more cost-effective than is more cost-effective than post-disaster recovery. In many cases, we spend a lot of time and resources in managing crises than preventing them and preparing for them. So that is one important critical aspect. The second is the value of climate services. So climate services, as most of you know, these are our weather forecasts, seasonal outlooks, and risk management information, which are foundational for informed decision making. These are really critical to get ahead of time and also act timely and efficiently. They enable governments, farmers, humanitarian actors, and communities to anticipate risks and plan ahead, improve agricultural productivity and food security accordingly, and support risk-informed policies and investments. So bridging the gap between science and action, these climate services are really important and meaningful actions when it comes to early warning and early action. So in many cases, these effective climate services are really required. When we say effective climate services, we are talking about timeliness, timely availability for decision making, and also accessibility. They should be accessible in a way and in a language that users can use them, and they should be actionable, and they should be also co-produced. So this makes them more effective. And we are planning to work with this in many areas, particularly in an institution. When I work here in Agra, we partner with many institutions, including regional, national, and also private startups to deliver this one. On the third point is the value of early warning and early action. I think, as most of you know, early warning systems are essential, but warnings must lead to action to have impact, in fact. So in many cases, we talk about early warning, but we don't talk about early action. So early warning should enable early action. Anticipatory action should allow us to act before crisis unfolds. This reduces human, economic, and environmental losses. And evidence shows that early action can, save lives and protect livelihoods, reduce humanitarian spending, prevent escalation of crisis, and also prevent conflict and erosion of fragile environments. So the success depends on last mile delivery, as I said earlier, that is climate services, ensuring that warnings and advisories reach communities in ways that understand and that are also building trust. Integrating climate services into early warning systems ensures that decisions are evidence-based and risk-informed. So the fourth point that I would like to mention for today is that the partnership. As we said, early warning and action cannot be done by a few institutions that are spearheading this. So partnerships are important from government side, from Met institutions, from humanitarian and development partners, local communities, and also NGOs who are operating at community level. Partnerships are necessary to enable us co-production of climate services, effective dissemination of early warnings, pre-arranged financing for anticipatory action. Always finance is a forgotten area, but finance is always necessary for making early warnings and make them into actionable items. Capacity strengthening at local and national levels is also important. So in all, trust, data sharing, and alignment are critical to turning information into timely action. And that is why partnership is critical for early action and early warning. So I think my call at the end is we need to move from commitment and talks into action. We must move from dialogue to delivery and operationalize systems that reduce risk before disasters strike. This includes, I think, majorly scaling up anticipatory financing mechanisms, embedding climate services and early action into national development plans, budgetary undertakings, and also implementation plans. Prioritize community-centered and locally led approaches. And at last, these all need to lead us into avoid and minimize losses and damages, not just respond to them. So in conclusion, resilience is built through foresight, coordination, and collective effort. By leveraging climate services, strengthening our partnerships, and investing in early action, we can turn risk information into resilience outcomes. Together, we have the opportunity to move from prediction to protection, safeguarding lives, livelihoods, and future. And I hope this webinar will give us the opportunity to discuss and detail these important issues. Thank you very much for your attention, and I really like this webinar to be more productive and interactive. Thank you so much. Over to you, Winnie.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Kidia, for your remarks. I think one thing to take away from that is that partnerships are really, really critical for early action as well as response. Thank you for your remarks. I think this also sets a very good foundation for what is to follow. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Paulino Omai to give us a presentation that also just sets the scene in terms of what we mean by avoided loss and damage, what is loss and damage, even what the institution is doing, what other frameworks exist on losses and damages, and where do we go from here. Paulino, you have 10 minutes starting now.
Good morning, good afternoon, and also good evening if there is some of us already joining us from Southeastern Asia. Hopefully you're able to hear me, Winnie.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. I want to take us to a short concept and also idea on the avoided losses and damages, where now we navigate the value of early warning and early action in our region and also beyond. In this presentation, as mentioned by Dr. Kindi, why it is very, very important for us to organize and participate in this webinar. If you look at nature of the climate in our region experiencing increase in extreme climate event, and also this climate event, extreme event could be from the drought, flood, heat wave, and also some of them related to slow onset events such as environmental degradation and also desertification, which is also taking us into another aspect related to humanitarian need, which is still continuing and raising in our region. And also there is a very big gaps in issues related to finance, where now we're able to see the value added on the losses and damages related to climate, where now the early warning and early action could offer opportunity for us able to see avoiding losses before the disaster occur in advance. So if you look on the nature of the loss and damage issues from angle where we're starting from the hazard to the losses, you'll find these losses actually driven by this climate extreme event in terms of hazard, which create an exposure and then interact with vulnerability. And if you use an example of drought, when drought combined with the impact on the pastoral communities, where now you see the livestock mortality, and also in case of flood, when you see it from angle also of settlement, where you can see the infrastructure being affected. And then also, if you look at heat wave, which is also recurring in our region, you see the vulnerable population, where now the impact on the health could be seen clearly. Therefore, the issues on the loss and damage, actually we refer it to the impact that occur despite the mitigation and adaptation effort. So there is some effort we do in terms of tackling the root cause and also how to survive with climate change. Therefore, the idea of discussing loss and damage from a perspective of impact that occur despite the mitigation and adaptation effort being seen. And all those losses could be seen clearly in terms of the economic losses and also non-economic losses. For example, for economic losses, you see some losses related to agriculture, livestock, infrastructure, and then non-economic losses related to human mobility, where people lose their life because of extreme event. Then some of them related to biodiversity or culture. All of them are non-economic losses in general. Then what really matter when we are talking about avoided losses? How are we going to avoid these losses? So we are seeing these avoided losses from a perspective of this is the losses actually do not occur because timely action was being taken. There is action being taken because of information being given in advance. Then you took action. Then after that, you managed to prevent these losses. Could be from an example of de-stocking the livestock before the drought to happen, and also early evacuation because of early warning being given, like what we do as ICPAC every 3 months. We disseminate what's going to happen in next 3 months. Therefore, the evacuation and other action being taken before the flood or drought being happening in the region. If you see from the humanitarian perspective, where now we have cases of pre-position of food assistance in advance because of also early warning being given in advance, and all of them being seen also in terms of the drought tolerant seed being distributed, and also the farmer took action. All of them that are contributing into the damages being avoided, because if we know action being taken, this one actually will occur. Therefore, the action being taken timely contributed into avoided losses. So timely action today really will help us to prevent the greater losses which could happen tomorrow. Therefore, if you look at the scientific evidence in our region in terms of standardized precipitation and evapotranspiration index, which is a very clear indicator for us to see the drought recurrent in our region. So this one now, actual analysis done from 1981 up to 2025. I just gave last 10 years, where now you can confirm our region experiencing recurrence of flood, drought. We move from the flooding, then we go into the after 2 years, the flood, then from flood you turn into drought. All of them, they are really creating into exposure, vulnerability, where now the growing exposure and vulnerability being seen in our region in terms of extreme event, whether flood or drought. All of them that are affecting our region because most of the socioeconomic activities are climate sensitive economic. So if you look at what happened in 2022, which is one of the worst drought in our region, you see most part of the region been affected and continued also to 2021, which also led into the fairly 5 consecutive seasons in our region. Therefore, the early warning is matter. So as what we do in ICPAC, we disseminate the seasonal forecast, climate outlook forum, and then also the drought monitoring at the weekly 10 days and also monthly seasonal for us able to see to move from early warning. This early warning been given also lead us into preparedness. This preparedness also could also be seen in early action being taken. And then this early action been taken, and also because of preparedness, all of them, they are contributing to reduce the impact, where now we can see the result in terms of avoided losses and damages. When you see the example specifically in a way for quantifying these losses, you can see from agriculture perspective and also humanitarian response, early action can reduce really mortality. Let us say, we can say this early warning contributing to reduction of mortality by this rate, for example, 30% to 60%. And also in terms of agriculture could lead into yield because already action been taken, or a response which led into response costs because of humanitarian responses, because of focus or impact-based focus being given, and also contribution of climate finance contribution and also investment. Therefore, investing in early warning and early action today really will prevent the greater losses and build also climate resilient community today and tomorrow. Therefore, in terms of the policy and finance mechanism, which is also under UNFCCC, which is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, you will see the issues of loss and damage being handled at international level and also regional level and moderated through the UNFCCC mechanism such as WASO, International Mechanism on Loss and Damage, Santiago Network, and also the fund responsible for responding to the loss and damage. They are very important because by end of process, we need the finance for anticipatory action to be taken in place, where now we can take action in advance, which need also a value added in terms of finance for avoiding losses. Therefore, strengthening the policy and finance mechanism, whether from regional or national level or other private sector, are very important because will contribute to addressing the issue related to loss and damage, whether economic or non-economic losses. Therefore, in IPAC, really, we are taking it seriously and we took some action in terms of climate monitoring, which is also contributing into the reducing the losses and also early warning value chain, and then also translating these anticipated action and these early warning into anticipated action, which contributing into losses and damage, because the reduced climate-related losses will be anticipated, and then now you can see the climate-related losses before the disaster to occur in advance, which is also adding more value in terms of giving climate services and early warning in advance. Therefore, climate losses and damage is also really as increasing in our region. Therefore, the early warning system really contributing to saving life and livelihood, which is also value added. And then early action, because the early warning without early action also will get us into a very close circle. Therefore, the early warning, which is associated and also with the early action, will lead into reduction of humanitarian costs, which could be spent on this action. Therefore, investing in early warning will help us to generate avoided losses. Therefore, if you look from angle of loss and damage of finance, really should contribute and support the anticipatory action for us to see the value of early warning. Together, as the institution, individual, really will be able to act early and then reduce the losses, then we're able to build climate resilient communities across the Eastern Africa region in general. Action been taken by IPAC for us able to deal with these issues. We're able to invest on the climate services, early warning platform, whether drought watch, hazard watch, agriculture watch, all those systems. We name them multi-early warning. All of them, they're contributing to reducing the losses could happen if no any action been taken. Therefore, the focus-based financing anticipatory action also was one of the key pillars where IPAC also investing on it. Then also the last pillar on the regional cooperation and working together, which is very important for us able to advance these issues related to loss and damage. Why we do that? We do it because we see every dollar we invested in early warning actually contributing to action being taken, which also contribute directly into saving life and then avoid losses could happen because of early action being taken because of early warning. Then also contributed into reduced impact. Those impact can be seen in terms of avoided losses and damage. Therefore, action for us able to strengthen the resilience and reducing the climate-related losses in Greater Horn of Africa is one of the mandate of IPAC. Therefore, let us work together to continue in advancing this agenda. Thank you very much. Over to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Paulino, for that presentation. That gives us quite a good basis to go off on, and I will not dwell on it. I will move to our next presentation, but before that, I would just like to let everyone know that if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A channel, and we will be able to go to that as we move along and try to answer all the questions that you would have raised there. So at the end of the presentations, we'll try to answer some, and then others we will get back to you with the responses. So next, I would like to invite Professor Ngoma for some scientific perspectives. So Professor Ngoma is in the world of academia, and I would like to invite him to talk about what is the scientific evidence for avoided losses and what exactly is the role of academia in informing loss and damage policy as well as practice, and more critically, how do we actually translate some of this scientific evidence into policy and finally into action that can help alleviate or address issues of loss and damage. So Professor Ngoma, please unmute yourself and share your presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Winnie, for the introduction. And the previous speakers, I think I've already set the tone to this conversation. Actually, had I known what you are presenting, then I would not have gone into the basics. But here we are. And thank you, everyone else, for having me. I'm happy to be here. I've seen quite a number of familiar faces, and this is what it means having such forums. Maybe I should also point out that we are trying, whatever I'm doing and whatever I'm presenting is that we refer most of the times to what you people are doing, especially ICPAC. So to me, it's a learning opportunity as well, and I'm happy for that. Maybe just to give you an overview or an introduction of who I am and what I do is that I'm based at Mohammed VI Polytechnic University in Morocco. This is a relatively new university in the 9th year of operations. The university is unique in the sense that it's a private university, but it was started and sponsored by a public corporate entity called OCP, which is phosphate mining and fertilizer processing company. I think we have offices in many places, including Kenya. I think recently there is OCP in Kenya. So that's what happens. For that, what it means is that there's a lot of interest, of course, into OCP's mandate and business desires. So most of the operations or research centers around agriculture, fertilizer, and the likes. The university has three, of course, based in Morocco, and three other international centers in Paris, Montreal in Canada, and New York. Other than that, there is a digital farming school in Ivory Coast, and it has plans to reach to other sub-Saharan African countries, and which will be very positive. So the university is progressing well in my own assessment, and it has grown. I think Times Education ranks it at number 5 in Africa. And in my view, I think this is possible because of the funding, which is kind of a limitation to a number of universities and institutions in Africa. And in a place where funding is not a major problem, then it's possible to put together a strong team, have the necessary equipment that can spur research and training. Just an overview of how the university is organized. I'll not go into the individual schools, but I just wanted to mention that I belong to the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. I think this introduction is not very important, given that we have already had what avoided losses and damages are, but maybe just to emphasize is that losses can be avoided, as has been said, and this is only possible when we have effective policies in place, the right investments, and timely interventions. And I think that's what we are discussing today. But other than that happening, there is also need to show that we can avoid these losses, quantify them. Of course, we have agreed we can do that, but are we in a place to quantify the avoided losses? What kind of metrics do we need? What kind of data do we need? Who does it? And those are some of the critical issues that academia can partly help to solve. As we know, academia research, the key things that come into place is research and training. Before there was issue of publications and the likes. They are good, yes, but they are better if they translate into action. because in the process of generating those publications and other research-related events, there is need for data, which is key in loss and damage. There's need for methodology, and there's need for metrics to be used to translate this data into information. And I think that's what universities do best. I'll just summarize this. I'm sure we shall have room for discussion moving forward, but I just given this in brief. And most of what I'm presenting, maybe I didn't mention this in the beginning, is that I'm linking it closely to what I'm doing because I'm based in the International Water Research Institute of the university. So many people around me are into water, are water experts, other than two of us who are into climate. So what we are doing is that personally and a few colleagues, we are setting up a climate and sustainable development laboratory. And what it does mainly is we focus on droughts, looking at variability of droughts, drought propagation, drought tracking, and most importantly, impact probability modeling. So with this information, what we're envisioning by the end of the day is that we should be in a position to tell, of course, we shall do mapping of hazards and the likes. We should be in position to tell the likelihood of drought. And when we start from meteorological drought, with the knowledge of drought propagation, we should be able to tell if it's likely to translate into agricultural drought and to what extent. And if we know that, we should also be able, from our impact probability model, to tell the likely impact of the drought in advance. And the impact here, we are trying to put it into economic value so that it informs policy, because by the end of the day, someone wants to know what's the actual value. So what the university does in that case is collecting evidence. That's what precisely we are doing. As we have said, we know there is impact, but what's the impact? You have to quantify it. You have to give it a value to it, regardless whether you're using finance or whichever, but you have to quantify it. And that's partly what we are doing. Assessment of vulnerability and risks. You have to know risk-prone areas and vulnerability, those people who are vulnerable, or systems or sectors and things of the sort. For us, we are connecting it closely to drought. We have to develop methodologies and metrics. Precisely, if I just connect to what we are doing, we started by assessing, of course, we start from mean climate. We look at droughts, and when you're looking at drought, we look at the metrics, the indices. For example, there are several. Paulina has just presented SPI, which is one of them, but there are several, almost 40 or so. We started by assessing the several to see which one works best. And you see that's in North Africa. It doesn't necessarily apply to East Africa, but such like information so that you know that if you're analyzing drought, you are using the right index for that case. So we have done such work. Then other works that follow to that is evaluating effectiveness of these interventions, because by the end of the day, we have said we need to take actions. But with the time, some of the actions are overtaken with the time, or because of innovation and capacity, now we are in digital age where the effectiveness of some of the interventions or even the metrics that we are using change with the time. So I think it's the role of academia to do an assessment of some of these operations and come up with recommendations that can help advance this further. And of course, capacity building, I think just like what ICPAC are doing and many research and training institutions, starting from students and even the policymakers themselves, because there are cases where we have people in place who are supposed to make decisions and they're not well informed. So it's good to have them understand the loss and damage component to help them make, be they financial or political, whichever decision they make. So such capacity building can well be done in the university environment. How climate indices or tools that we use to inform warning and action, these are a bit general. Maybe we don't have to go into one by one. For instance, when you're looking at the types of indices that I used, just as Paulino has used SPI, we have SPI, which has its own advantage and disadvantage. Heat wave duration index, we have cool days, warm days, the maximum precipitation recorded in 5 days. You can start by looking at 1 day, 5 days, and 20 days, depending on where you are and your needs. But what does that do? by the end of the day, it can help us to identify emerging threats because we can monitor hazard. Like for our case, we are looking at drought, which is our hazard. Then when you monitor it, you can tell whether it's a threat or not, depending on how it evolves. Thresholds are very important as part of what you're doing. You can tell if it reaches this extent, this is likely to happen. And so you provide an alert and estimate potential impacts. That's precisely what we are doing. We are able to come up with a scale whereby we know whenever the threshold reaches this much, this is the financial implication of the drought in agriculture sector. Ways of quantification is quite broad as well, again, depending on the needs. We have the economic and non-economic losses and damage. For economic, we have the direct and indirect. So precisely for our case, we are doing indirect losses and damage, whereby we have developing a model where we have input and output. That's why I said by the end of the day, if we know there's drought likely to happen, with all the information that we have, we are like the output that we shall get is the value of the possible loss that are associated with the drought. Otherwise, there are several other methods, especially for non-economic loss and damage, which is quite challenging and involving. It requires a lot of data, and you can apply them depending on the resources, the time, and everything else at hand. Then the other key issue is from science to action. Yeah, we have all this data, we have information, we have the model, we have everything that it takes as far as research and training is concerned. But how do we translate into actions? So here I just try to identify what we call science to action enablers. And they're a bit general. I think they vary from one region to the other, but some of these are a bit general. For example, I've mentioned production of policy-relevant evidence. We produce evidence every now and then. We have a lot of theses in the wardrobes, in the libraries. We have publications coming out every day. Actually, it's a very good business for those who want to venture into business. But by the end of the day, the question is this information policy relevant? I think that's what we should be striving to do. And I'm sure I've seen someone here who will likely talk about this, the policy relevance aspect. So designing decision support tools, yes, we have able to try to develop an impact from, like for a case what we are doing, we are able to link drought to possible financial impact. But how does the user or the policymaker in this case, or action or a decision maker, make decision using this information that you have? So we are developing, by the end of the day, we are developing an application that has all these thresholds and everything else, whereby you just have to put in data and you have everything on your screen. That helps to make a decision easy. That's what we talk about, the support tools. Capacity building, I've already talked to this. Some of the people in place who are supposed to make decisions are not well informed, and it's the role of science or academia or research to bridge this gap. Co-production, I think Paulino talked about this, and you do this best. I don't have to talk about it. Accurate and targeted communication is very key, of course. Then, if that happens, we need to strengthen these collaborations. That's why when I mentioned towards the end, strengthening of science policy interface. How do we strengthen this interface? This is where collaboration comes in. And they are more alike, as well as they are more alike to the enablers that help to translate science into action. So we realize they are more or less the same. So for example, co-production as well helps strengthen those collaborations. Joint capacity building forums, very, very important as well in strengthening collaborations. Long-term partnerships, not just one-off events. If you have a long-term partnership, it helps to do this. Then, of course, data, they has already spoken into in the beginning. I think it's very important when you have data and knowledge, sharing it helps a lot. Just to conclude, we know and we have heard today and from all of daily operations that, sorry if you're not following this. So we know that science offers a solid foundational understanding and quantifying loss and damage. And it's very important to quantify this, not just say we know, of course, but quantify it, and that's where science comes in. And it also helps to create an impact when this science information that we have it creates an impact when we translate it into actions. And we have seen co-production coming out strongly in two ways. One, being an enabler, and two, promoting long-term collaboration. So it comes out very strongly, and I think you people can speak to this. And that's what I have for today. I'd like just to thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ngoma, for your insights. Really good presentation there, just letting us know some of the ways in which we can make these linkages between academia, policy, as well as practice. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Thonjo. Mr. Thonjo is from the Climate Change Department at the Ministry of Environment, and he is going to talk to us about the national experiences and the perspectives on avoided losses and damages, and especially some of the challenges and opportunities that exist, as well as the policies and, of course, the issue of finance. Mr. Thonjo, please unmute yourself and go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, and thank you, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to present and to appreciate the presenters who have come before me, who have captured a lot of issues that I was to speak to, and that is great to see. There is a lot that is happening in the climate space and also under the loss and damage. And apology, I will not be using my presentation because I left my gadget at the office, and unfortunately we were not allowed to go today. When we were in the road, we were returned back to our homes. So I will give some of the perspective, but I will not repeat what others they have talked about. Can I introduce myself? I'm James Thonjo. I work with the Ministry of Environment under Climate Change Directorate. I'm the focal point for the loss and damage for the country, both for Santiago Network for Loss and Damage and also for WOSO International Mechanism, and technical in matters of the Fund for Responding for Loss and Damage. And I also negotiate for Kenya, and also I represent Africa in two boards within the UNFCCC, that is WIMEXCOM, and also currently I have joined the Santiago Network body representing the Annex 1 countries. So thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. And just to say about the Kenya institutional policy approaches to address the loss and damage. Currently, the matters of climate change is being coordinated in the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, and the lead agency is the Climate Change Directorate, and this is from the Act of 2016, which created the Directorate as the lead agency to coordinate the matters of the climate change. And for us, we have just domesticated the global policy, that is the UNFCCC, the convention, that's the UNFCCC, and also the Paris Agreement. And as you're aware, the loss and damage is Article 8 of the Paris Agreement. And in the negotiation, we rarely use the word avoiding, because the language, it is the activity to avert, minimize, or to address loss and damage. So when you talk about averting, that is now when you are talking about avoiding these losses that we may anticipate because of the diverse effects of the climate change. So we don't have specific policy to address, but we have captured matter of the loss and damage in our NDC, that's the National Determined Contribution, and also in our short-term implementation action plan, which is National Climate Change Action Plan, under the priority sector 1, that is disaster risk management. That is where we usually capture the matters of the loss and damage. But we have made a good stride recently because we are among the first country in Africa to get the technical assistance. We had requested the technical assistance from the Santiago Network for the loss and damage, just to do the assessment for the losses and damage, because we have data gap not only in Kenya but several of the countries that are suffering from the data for the losses and damage, and that is, as a country, we requested to do a comprehensive loss and damage assessment from 2015 to 2025, then projection to 2050, and then 2100. So as now we can be able to develop what we call the response mechanism. So currently we are waiting the assessment, which will be starting in this July. So once they have done the assessment and then they have given us the value, both economic and non-economic losses, specific per sectors and also with the vulnerability of each county. And then the projection at that time now, that's when we can be able now to develop response mechanisms. So for now, we have no specific policy that addresses the matters of loss and damage or response to the losses and damage. And you can see on the language that comes to the fund, those who are following the negotiation, you saw it's the fund to respond to loss and damage, not to address loss and damage, because from the Paris Agreement, the decision in COP 21, the language on compensation was not allowed, and that is why it has been taken a decision that these matters will not be used as the basis for compensation. That is when the language for the fund changed now to the fund for responding to loss and damage. So within our own experience as the country, we have been going through a lot of losses because there is a threshold once you exhaust your adaptation limits. So when we come to the hard limits, that's when we experience, and I can give you some of the scenarios, and some of them have been mentioned earlier. One's from the drought, some is from the floods, and currently we have a new scenario where you see all the Rift Valley lakes, they are just swelling. And as a country, we have done some scoping report initially in 2020 to identify the reasons why all these Rift Valley lakes, they are swelling. There was many attribution onto it, but because we have Lake Victoria, which is not within the Rift Valley, which also it's swelling, and now it's not more of about the tectonic movement, but other underlying hydrometric maybe issues. So there is several research that has been done, and it's good to see the academia coming on board because they have been so instrumental to us. And currently, we have submitted both also the request for the funding to respond to loss and damage. And there was a challenge initially that we had now is to have the assessment tools, those methodology tools. And now for that one, we utilized our academia, that is Kenyatta University and Masinde Muliro University, and with the other experts, and we had now to develop our own data collection tool that will capture both an economic and economic losses, so we can be able to bid for the to the fund for responding for the loss and damage. So the experience, early warning is very key, and I believe, and also why we are facing a lot of losses and damage, both in most of our countries, that we don't have like reliable early warning system. It's because we cannot be able to prepare. And I can give an example for the rising lakes, and because we have done the assessment for 1 month ago, we did the assessment for 4 lakes. And because community, they could just see the lake swelling, but there was no early warning that was either in either of the lakes. So what could happen, it was a slow onset event, but at a point the lake had to burst because one community member said it stayed at one place for, I think, 2 months. But over one day when they went and come back, they find the entire settlement has been submerged. So if we had early warning system in such places, they could have be able maybe not to evacuate everything, but also they could have now removed some of their valuable asset, and then maybe we could have minimized the losses and damage in that area. And the loss on, so under the WIM, as you know, the loss and damage, it has 3 different levels. So also international mechanism that was established in 2013 under the convention, its main aim is to guide the countries, the parties on matters of the policy. And that is where they deal with the policy, developing guidelines, and they have developed several guidelines that are supporting countries now to implement some of the actions within their country. And you'll see there is 5 different working group, and that's where you'll find them where also the task force for displacement falls, the slow onset events working group falls. Then we have non-economic losses fall, and also there is other on economics, and also under that one that deals with the what we call climate risk and something to do with the insurance. So where the Fiji clearings, there's something called Fiji clearance, I think, house where it falls. So there are several groups that are also working groups that handles on that matter for the loss and damage in terms of the policy and the policy guidance, and they usually meet twice per year to agree on which knowledge product are we going to produce to support countries in specific area. And they have been producing good knowledge products, but the challenge that has been one on the absorption of those knowledge products, and the challenge has been they have been being viewed by the parties like they are more of academic but not for practitioner. And that's now we are working on a process on how now we are going now to unpack some of those guidelines to support the practitioner now to be able to utilize it. So the second arm of the loss and damage, that is the Santiago Network for the Loss and Damage, that is supposed to help countries with the soft issues, that is to provide the technical assistance. The main aim for the Santiago Network is just to catalyze the technical assistance for the countries, and that is why it is there, so countries can request and then they get that technical assistance depending on which area you need support on matters of the loss and damage. Some they are asking to for the tracking of the loss and damage, some they are asking for the assessment, some they are asking for the system within their own countries or inventory. So it depends on this on the Santiago Network for the loss and damage. Both the state and non-state actors can request for that technical assistance, and the secretariat is based in Geneva. So once you request, and then one unique thing it is when the Santiago Network was being operationalized, the main aim was to how we can utilize our academia and the research institutions to do some of the work. And that is why when you see the modality of accessing and implementation under the Santiago Network is unique because whoever requests the technical assistance cannot take it. So it's supposed to be done by the organization, body, and networks and experts, which in short they are being called the OBNEs. So, and this is just to request, maybe if you have institution that they want to register, they can register and be member. And also, once the country requests, like how we have requested our comprehensive assessment, you can bid and be able to support Kenya or any other country to undertake the work or that gap what they have invested. Then we have the third level, that is on the fund for responding for the loss and damage, which now is supposed now to give the full funding for the actual activity, actual interventions. So the funding comes now from the funding for the loss and damage, which is now separate entity on its own with its board and every other thing, and they are being based in Barbados. They're supposed to be housed in the Philippines. And you know we have come to the end of the first modality, that's Barbados implementation modality, the BIM, which was closed on 15th of June this year because the window was open from last year at COP 30, and it was ending in this June, and several countries they have bidded and requested for support to undertake some of the actual activities or interventions are related to the loss and damage within the countries, and the requests have gone in different range. Some they have requested for the economic activities, some to address non-economic activities, some just to do the response mechanism within their countries, and it differs some on the capacity issues, so it differing from one country to another. But one thing in common, it is most of the country they are suffering on matters of the data, and because also I'm a reviewer under the biannual transparency report, I do review the reports under the enhanced transparency, and during the review, one of the areas that we have identified there is a lot of gap, it's on the reporting of the potential losses and damage because under the what we call the MPG modality procedure and guidelines that guides the country on how they're supposed to report. In that aspect, no country was able to report on the projection of the losses and damage, and you can see most of the requests now they are going within that area in terms of the request the technical assistance. So there is a lot of opportunity that the institution like ICPA can take advantage of because now we have developed what we call the TORs. Maybe from 2028 we will be having loss and damage gap report, like the same as adaptation gap report every year, but this will be a global report. So we are hoping some of the institutions that are now within specific regions, they can be able to customize some of this information to help their own parties within their own region, now able either to implement or to take up advanced actions to avoid or to avert or to address loss and damage. And this is an opportunity that it is already there, and this is upon the registration, and also we can support other countries. There is a lot of opportunity because currently we don't have standardized methodology to assess loss and damage. We don't have standardized quantification methodology. Now we can be able to quantify the losses. On the NELS, there is another challenge there also on the quantification, because also we are doing it on our own. So each country they are just using their own methodology and approaches. And this is the major issue also, because we don't have an agreed language or what we mean by the loss and damage associated with the climate change. Another issue, the biggest challenge, is on the attribution on matters of the loss and damage with the climate change issues. And I can give the example is when now we are being hit by the floods, maybe for example within the city, for example the city of Nairobi. So you need to attribute, and some of the issue it is now, at what point will we say it's not the negligence? It's because maybe there was no enough drainage system, people had built within the riparian areas and every other thing. So there is a lot of the attribution issues, and there is a lot of challenge in that one now to be able to attribute this with the climate change. And these are some of the opportunity that parties or these research institution and also institution like IPCA can take advantage of. So those are some of the areas under the climate change, under the loss and damage, under the convention, and its Paris Agreement that I can speak to. And I know the value of the early warning system. Right, currently, those who are in Kenya, you can notice that we will have a low yield this year. Main reason because when the suspected time that we used to do planting, it's always I come from Trans Nzoia, and we shall do it in March, the late March and also April. And this time the rain came early February. So majority they didn't plant, and those who planted, now we have another like 2 or 2 in the last 2 months. We don't have the rains, and the maize they're just now drying in the farmlands. So it means there was no good early warning system that could advise the farmer on what to do and when to plant and how now they are going now. So majority they're going to experience a lot of loss this year attributed from in agriculture sector. So the other gap that or challenge that we'll have, it is so easy to have narrative along the non-economic losses, like the number of deaths. Where you can say now we have lost this biodiversity. We have many other. We have lost the identity, cultural, territorial areas. But now, because the fund funds the activity, so when it comes now to quantify the activity just for being funded, and I can give you, for example, when we were doing the assessment, we find like there was one family that after the entire building was submerged, the man of the house went dumb, and today, like it's around 4 months, 5 months, he has never spoken. So we can note it on the report, but we need an intervention to support people going through those psychological impacts and also some of the other impacts. So now quantifying those activity, that's the major challenge that countries they are facing. And that way you could see recently, countries, what they bidded, they bidded more on economic activities, either roads, infrastructure, among others. That is easy to quantify the same activity, because the fund is funding the activity, not about mentioning on how much you lost, but which are some of the activity that you are going to put in place. So thank you, and back to you, moderator.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Thonjo, for that very candid presentation. And I must say, I'm very happy you've highlighted this challenge with non-economic loss and damage, especially bringing in this issue of psychological impact and mental health impacts that might have very far-reaching effects. Yet when you look at how we develop and design proposals, they're mostly focused on the economic side, where you can easily quantify, and sometimes it's difficult to really, put some of these psychological impacts, health impacts, into real quantities. So of course we have to look at different ways of bringing this to light and addressing it in our interventions. So thank you very much for that. And I also like the fact that you have linked the work that you are doing at the CCD Ministry by extension with the work that academia is doing, especially in coming up with assessment tools for loss and damage in Kenya. And I think because of that, I will also direct the first question that we have to you, because you talked about communities, especially those along the lakes where they have been displaced because of lake level rises. So my question, one of the questions that has been posted is, so why do communities continue suffering avoidable losses? So I would ask you to answer that question. And then I also have another question on how can Africa reduce disaster losses through early warning and early action? And this question I will direct to Professor Ngoma. And then we will, once you answer those ones, then we will go to other questions in the chat. So Mr. Thonjo, I think I will hand over to you again for you to answer, and also any other questions in the chat. And I would request that if possible, please turn on your video.
I hope you can see me. You can hear me, not see me.
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Yeah, the reason why I have not opened my video, I'm just somewhere in the bush because
It's okay.
the call on my way. So the reason why, maybe you can see I'm just standing somewhere along the farm. So the reason why we are still encountering the losses and damage within our communities, one, it's on the financing, because no matter how good you come with the proposal or intervention, we have several proposals. And I can give you one that for Kenya, I can use the Rising Lakes and the specific Lake Baringo. During the scoping report, there was proposed intervention, and also the Kenyatta University has gone ahead and developed another proposal on some of the intervention that is supposed to be done to protect or to support the community. But the funding has been the challenge because, this is one of the area. Even its funding, under the GCF, the Green Climate Fund, there was no that provision to support on the matters of the loss and damage. The GEF had no mechanism of the same to support the loss and damage. The Adaptation Fund, there was no that provision for the loss and damage. And it has taken so long for us to have a fund that can support loss and damage. So the issue is the funding, and then also the priority for the countries. It differs from one area to another because of the development issues. And that is where the fund came in place to support some of the activity that cannot be budgeted for. And I can give you, for example, it's now when they are doing the annual budget, and it comes now to the matters of the drought and the impacts. Some of these that cannot be been put on the paper just for the interventions, because they are competing with the other development activities for the country. So, and this has been the biggest challenge. And also the funding, you can see the funding modality, it has differs. And I can give you, for example, like the open call, it was between the tune of 5 million to 20 million. That's little money comparing to the magnitude and the current intensity and the frequency of the losses and damage are these extremes that you are experiencing, that can not be able to cushion our community. And also some of the early warning system, some of the countries that are in advance, but some of us, we are not yet there. We have a lot of automatic weather stations, but you'll be shocked, maybe half of them, they are not working or they don't transmit that information. And also among our community perspective, and I can give you example for one of the area like Samburu County, where they cannot agree on any scientific information until the indigenous community, that there is an elderly person, they must now slaughter the goat and now give the same information. And they usually believe in what the indigenous or that their own local early warnings guidance from that elderly community. And what the government has done nowadays, they usually do KMD, they produce their own the assessment and projection. Then they invite that elderly person also to slaughter, and they usually disseminate that information together. And it's currently working. So the issue is the biggest is the financing and also the data, and also that gap on early warning. system. So, and that's the biggest challenge. So we should not have that advisory. And if we have those advisories, sometimes the budget to support our communities. And I think there's something, and that's why we should call for additional finance. And I know you know about how the responsibility and how the funds they need to flow, which is the biggest challenge. But at least we are now moving somewhere. And also you can see the funding that went to the funding for the responding for loss and damage. Currently it's around 400 and something million USD, small money compared to other interventions that are or other mechanism, maybe for the peace within the countries, for the war and every other development. So the biggest challenge is funding. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Very, very well put. Funding is a main issue among other issues. Victor, over to you, Professor Ngoma, for your response on that question, and then we'll come to the floor and take some questions. Please be brief. Thank you.
Could you come up again on the question?
Yes, so the question to you was, how can Africa reduce disaster losses through early warning and early action?
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll just like to reframe what James has said. He has literally said everything. Maybe I'll just look at priorities. One is start by countering what he talked about, the early warning and the weather information maybe not being, I don't know whether I should say timely or accurate. I don't know what implies exactly. But in my own assessment, and if you are on global forums, you realize that countries like Kenya across the continent are on the far front in producing, or just say the region of East Africa, in producing climate products or services. So I don't know where the problem is. I think it's more of maybe targeted communication. Even looking at the focus, trying to link the foreseen losses of the current season, yet the focus was out. So you ask yourself, where is the gap? Because in my own assessment, I think the accuracy of the focus has increased a lot and it can be utilized to avert some of these losses. So we should look at where is the gap between the production and the end user or the uptake. Africa, how it can avert this, I think as he closed his argument, I also want to take up from there. I think the major issue is the funding because there is a need for infrastructure. If I give two case studies, for instance, a few countries in Northern Africa, let me just use Morocco and Kenya. I think Morocco even experiences more severe droughts as compared to Kenya, but you rarely see Morocco in news, people dying of hunger or experiencing all those losses that we have already talked about. Why is it so? I think it's just the investment in these sectors, the correct infrastructure and funding to support some of the programs that can help to alleviate or avert some of the losses. So major issues around the funding. And again, if I want to broaden the scope, why is it that we have a funding issue? I look at priorities and it goes back to leadership. It's not that Africa is poor. We have had this discussion in various forums. We know we have resources, but just making good use of resources and giving priorities where it's due. I think that's what's meaning. So back to leadership. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thanks for those key pointers to some of the gaps and how we can be able to address them. Of course, noting that finance is a key way of addressing this. So we'll now come back to the floor. I can see some raised hands and we'll continue responding to the questions that you put in the Q&A chat. And also just to mention that all the presentations will be shared with you, have actually been shared. Yes, you can find the presentations there for your reference, and we can continue this conversation also. So I would like to invite Nelson. Please unmute yourself and give your question. Nelson, please proceed. You are still muted. Nelson, please unmute yourself. Okay. Yes. Hello. We can hear you now.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, on my end, I currently being a student, learning environmental science. So far, really thankful for this session and all the information that's being shared. I am very much interested in just learning especially on especially on now the data that's being used and the models that are being made on now addressing that gaps, especially tailored gaps to now the end users. Suppose for a farmer, how would they be able to be told exactly if you're planting maize or if you're planting these specific crops? So finding those tailored supposing applications or information that can be given to them and how that can be done. So that's something that I'm very interested in also hearing thoughts on as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll come to the answer, but we'll take all the questions now. Mary, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon. My question on the Q&A, but it has not been addressed. So I wanted to know how effective the current meteorological and hydrological monitoring systems in detecting emerging risks, how effective they are, and how can sudden onsets of shocks and hazards can best be dealt with. And I'm happy to hear that James, who comes from Trans Nzoia, despite the normal patterns that we know, things change. So there are those sudden events that cannot be predicted. And I also wanted to know how IGAD, whether IGAD and also the partners they work with, whether they have the dedicated financing for early action, and how governments can access them. Like I work from the State Department for Arid Semi-Arid Lands, and we live with shocks and hazards. So how can these funds be accessed if they're there?
Thank you very much for your question. We will come to answer that. And then the final question, I would like to give the floor to, you have the floor, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Winnie. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I put a question and Paulino responded to that, but I still felt it would be nice to somehow emphasize the importance of the information we produce is relevant to negotiations. I think what makes these efforts relevant for negotiations is understanding of how this concept of loss and damage is different when it comes to the scientific community. By scientific community, I mean, for example, in the IPCC space, loss and damage is considered as entirely impacts that come from purely anthropogenic forcings. I know what do we mean by these residual impacts. In that sense, that somehow hinders the impacts that come from variability or natural forcings, right? So when we generate evidence, particularly for loss and damage, focusing on the quantitative estimate of loss and damage that comes from only anthropogenic forcings would be ideal, so that our efforts at the end will somehow inform policies and negotiations, right? If we continue producing this information, assuming this loss and damage is residual impacts, then at some point the information, the evidence we produce may somehow be less relevant. That's just my frustration. Even when we assess loss and damage that comes from purely anthropogenic climate change, for African countries, it's way too much. Like for some countries, in some parts of those countries, African countries, this loss and damage can go to up to 90%. We looked into crop loss and damage. We did a work on loss and damage with yield loss and damage some time ago, and then these estimates are bigger than expected. So even focusing on anthropogenically induced loss and damage can be substantial and inform negotiations very well. That's what I just wanted to mention. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that and for making that distinction between the IPCC definition and the UNFCCC sort of definition around loss and damage. I think the main difference there is that the IPCC sees this in terms of the the physical harm of climate change, whereas the UNFCCC goes ahead and considers also the policies, the frameworks, as well as the funding that is related to this. So thanks for highlighting that. So I think we will ask our panelists now to respond to this, and in very, very few minutes. We are almost out of time. So I will start with Paulino to respond to primarily, I think, Mary's question. And then we will go to the other esteemed panelists for the day. Paulino, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mary. I responded to your question in the chat. I think you can check, and also other 13 questions. Then also looking to answer the other one in the chat. Regarding the partnership, actually we are working with the different partners at the international level, and then also, for example, WMO, which is a World Meteorological Organization, is a international organization coordinating the climate services aspect. And then if you look from the policy and the science aspect, also we have a IPCC, and then you come into national level also, we have working with national government agencies at the national level, and also some partners are dealing with issues on the policy and financing. Some of them are international organizations, some of them regional organizations. Then issues on, as we know, the loss and damage, especially low onset events such as desertification or land degradation, all of them are low onset. And then the action actually been mentioned by Professor when the science-based analysis and also scientific evidence on the changes and anticipated a change based on what happening in the past can contribute into anticipating what's going to happen in future. So the science is one of the solutions for you to deal with this low onset. And then on the funding, although it's a main key challenges, also majority of organizations are still facing, but we have to see the private sector also as another mechanism for us able to see issues of loss and damage. And then experience at the country level already mentioned by Brother James, and this is a very good experience, and also practice was done by Kenya government. So as the other question, the scene also will be able to answer some of them in the chat, and then the one remain also will answer them, and they may get it later on. Over to you, Winnie.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I still saw some raised hands in the chat, so 2 of them. So I think I'll give them a chance. You have 30 seconds. So starting with Mr. Bebe, please unmute yourself and go ahead with the question.
Hi, Winnie. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Please proceed.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Firstly, I would like to thank you, the moderator, and the panelists, the presenters, Dr. Kinde, Dr. Paulino, Dr. Victor, and James. Very educative, very informative presentation. Yeah, as you promised, you will share those presentations for all the participants. Having said this, my question is really on the Super El Nino 2026 and potentially for the northern countries, the northern member of IGAD countries, is going to be more of a dry situation. And for the southern countries, especially when it comes to OND, is going to be more of flood. So 2 contrasting impacts. But my question is on the quantification of those impacts, the droughts in the northern part and floods in the southern, especially Victor, I heard you are doing some research to quantify impacts of drought. So what can you say on the quantification of loss and damage on that? Personally, I'm interested in drought issues, and hopefully I will contact you privately on how we can work together on quantification of drought impacts. So if you have something to say, I would really be happy. Over to you, Winnie.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think the other participant, Omar, has lowered his hand. So I think we will go to the panelists. So Professor Ngoma and then Mr. Thonjo. And please, as you respond to the questions raised, also give your closing remarks or comments. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll respond to Abebe's question or inquiry and link it to one of the questions that came earlier on data. So all this process requires data, and especially the impact or the loss quantification component is even more challenging because it requires both secondary data and primary data. For instance, what we are working on relating to drought, it's mostly, we have engaged a number of PhD students on this, and unfortunately, some of them are not able to finish and graduate on time. And the major limitation was data, because accessing all the data that we need to develop a drought probability impact model was a challenge. Somehow we have gotten there, but we still have to take time to validate this. So I think that's where the problem is. So getting data is a problem. That's why I said towards the end that as a way of strengthening collaborations between research and policymakers or practitioners is having data sharing and knowledge sharing framework, which makes work easier. When it comes to the last question that asked about the impact, yeah, I've partly mentioned about it. And of course, what we have done for Morocco cannot be replicated on another country the way as it is, but can go through some form of improvement. So we can build on that to maybe apply it in your region. But basically what we did, we started by identifying some serious droughts, look at secondary data, look at environmental conditions, look at the primary data from socioeconomic surveys, and try to come up with this model that we have already developed. As I mentioned, we have not validated it, but we are yet to validate and try to release it for use in the industry. So that it's a process, and I'll be happy to share the steps that we have gone through if you want to try and replicate same thing in your area. Thank you very much. Otherwise, I'm very happy to meet very many people that are very familiar and have this opportunity. I've also learned a lot. It helps us to also improve on what we are doing on this end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much too. Mr. Thonjo, the floor is yours. Yes, we can't hear you very clearly. I think we've lost you. Okay, I think we can go to Paulino, and then Mr. Thonjo, if you can hear me, please go ahead. You are muted. I can see you're muted. Please unmute yourself. We still cannot hear you. I think we can go to Paulino for some final remarks and some key takeaways, and then we will come back to you, Mr. Thonjo, and then we will wrap up. Paulino.
Thank you very much, Winnie. As we are coming to the end, this webinar on avoided loss and damage, it is really very important because we'll see the value of early warning and early action, and then also from the science perspective and what been felt at the ground level, and it was very clear from the report every one of us managed to get from James from the perspective of Kenya. Therefore, the climate-related losses and damage really are increasing in our region, and there is no way for us to run away from it. We have to deal because our region is experiencing more frequent and intense drought, flood, and heat wave, another extreme event, which is also leading to growing economic and non-economic losses. Therefore, the value of early warning, it is very important because by end of process, timely as one of the questions been asked in how we are tracing this early warning. And it is very, very, very important for us to put our trust on this early warning, because this early warning, when they're given on the timely and also is accurate early warning, the action can be followed, where now will be see the actionable climate information is enabling the government and other institutions or community level for them able to see, or even humanitarian actors for them able to prepare and respond in advance and also anticipate the coming risk. Then looking at the loss and damage also has been mentioned by James, and also what experience in Kenya. integration into the national and regional planning, starting from national level. Therefore, the countries should strengthen really the integration of loss and damage consideration into the national adaptation plan and also nationally determined contribution NDCs, which is also advocated through the work being done by national ministries who are dealing with the environment. All of them are very, very important. As we are coming to the end, really the sustainable financing remain essential for all of us, for us able to deal with issue related to losses because of climate extremism, or for us able to anticipate or action to be taken, where now we'll see the value of climate services and resilient building, which is also can be seen across the fund being given in terms of climate finance, and also the fund responding to loss and damage, although the countries has a different level, which is also very important on forecast-based financing. And as mentioned by Professor Ngoma, the science actually based on this data, the quality and accuracy of this data, also the information will be generated from it. It is very, very important. Therefore, we need to strengthen the multi-early warning system because we see the value of information for us able to the risk and we take the action. Then on quantification also is very, very important. It is not possible for us, as been mentioned by Prof and also alluded by James, it is not possible for us to do some improvement on issue related to quantification of the loss and damage or avoid the losses without data. Therefore, we need to really develop the methodology has been mentioned by Professor Ongoma. The methodologies to measure the avoid losses resulting from the early warning or other extreme event through the action is very, very important, because it's not possible for us to see this, the value of a strengthened climate risk analysis or even other spot being mapped out by the scientists in the region if there is no methodology to quantify it. Then also, as one of the participants also asked, enhancing the accessibility to this risk very important. We in ICPAC, we are working on it for us able to mobilize resources for preparedness and resilience, for us able to enhance the access to climate disaster risk finance at the different region, at the regional level, also helping countries for them to advance in that perspective. And also the capacity building, very important. And this is one of the aspects of this webinar also, contributing directly or indirectly in capacity building, where now we're able to build the technical capacity of entities in our region through sharing information, where now we're able to enhance the capacity of the local government, humanitarian agencies, and other partners for us to be in the same page. Because by any process, policy integration cannot be done alone. So we need to mainstream this early warning or the research outcome, whether coming from the IPCC or coming from the researchers, independent research in the region, for us able to strengthen them, which is not possible to be done through without coordination, which is also was very clear. And one of the examples linking the work of government of Kenya at the national level with the national actors for them to strengthen the coordination among the climate developmentals, and then for us able to see the value added in that. So let us work together for us able to strengthen the regional collaboration through the partnership. And we in ICPAC, really, we are ready and we are going to continue with this webinar for us able to advance this agenda. And also we'll be able to loop in other and expand this partnership into other developmental and humanitarian agencies like WMO, UNS, UNDRR, FAO, World Food Program, and also UNDP and other organizations, World Bank, for them also to see the value being added, and then we're able to tackle the issue related to climate finance. As we coming to the end, really, I want to appreciate every one of us for you able to tune in, and also I want to appreciate the all presenters, and let us just continue working together for us to advance the agenda of climate change in our region. We in ICPAC, IGAD, we are committed really to strengthen the value of working together from the local, national, regional, then also into international, and also working with our sons and daughters who manage to get some technology in other areas. Like now we brought Professor Ongoma. We'll be able to bring others also who are still somewhere in Europe for them able to contribute into our agenda in the region. I want to just say thank you very much, and we appreciate. and just follow ICPAC website, because by end of process, we'll be able to update all this information. And if we have other contribution webinars also, you will be able to see them from our website. I want to appreciate ICPAC, IGA team who behind this, so we can name it a successful webinar. And also I want to appreciate our partner, AGRA, the organization we are working together. Let us continue and build a spirit of working together. I want to give to Kindi 2 minutes if you're able to close this webinar. Before over to you, Winnie, let me just give Dr. Kindi, if he's still around, in 1 minute to 2 minutes to close this webinar. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think this is really an elaborative forum that we all learned something out of this gathering. And I'm really thankful to ICPAC and all the partners who got involved in preparing this webinar. Also thank moderator Winnie for a nice moderation of this session, and the panelists for sharing their invaluable insights and knowledge. I think we've seen that the science on early warning is advanced. I think it's not the same as what we were in the last 10 years or before. We have the information. The problem is we are not able to convert that early information into action. And that action has to be, at different levels. It's not only one, or government level, national level, subnational level, community level. So there are different, levels that we have to go through and do that. And this is really critical, and we all need to do it. And the purpose of this session is that one institution cannot do this. We may have, different responsibilities along the value chain. For example, the ICPAC and national meds could be, responsible for producing the early warning. And then after that, translating that, communicating that, and getting feedback is different from the responsibility of this institution. So others should come in and take that into, delivering that information. The loss and damage is critical, because I think this is one of the ways that Africa should mobilize at least international climate finance. The methodology has been there. It's not new. I myself has been involved in quantifying loss and damage in agriculture, and there are a lot of publications. If we synthesize them, I think the methodology is clear. But the problem is, I think the negotiations are still on and off. There are countries who doesn't want to take that responsibility. So there is a push and pull. I think we need to support the African group of negotiators and our colleague here from the Kenya, who is responsible at the national level to work on this, so that we have a firm and solid ground to negotiate at that level. So those are the things. But I think, as we said, this is the work of every one of us. It's not one institution or two that can deliver this. Let us work together and let us deliver, for our communities who are suffering disproportionately out of this unfortunate impact. Thank you so much, and that's all from me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Very much appreciated. And again, thank you very much to our speakers today. Thank you to the team, my colleagues, for all the support for this particular webinar. And also a huge thank you to you, our participants, for joining and staying with us even beyond time. I would just like to leave you with a comment that was in the chat by Brazil. Musumba, who says that the gap between scientists and end users is that a lot of resources are allocated to generating the information and very little to produce the consumable climate products. So real co-production is very important. So as you go away today, you can reflect on this particular comment. So thank you very much. We will be in touch with you again and update you on our plans and how we will continue this conversation. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.